The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Fantasy. Our is a brand new deal. If you play just $5, get $50 in bonus funds when you sign up with promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Monday morning, early Monday morning, around 4 a.m. Eastern on August 18th. I'm as always Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the preview of Winston-Salem. Now, I am aware the event did start on Sunday. I was traveling back from Vegas, didn't have time to record, so we are 1 day short. But either way, still a bunch of actual outright odds to actually make bets on. And of course, the main players in the field haven't played yet because they had a bye in the first round. So we're going to get into the quarters as well. We have quarter odds, so it should be a pretty fun episode. We have nothing to recap, though, from the Lock and Dog because we had no match yet. We're waiting for Sinner and Alcaraz to play against each other on Monday. Once again, a really dumb scheduling idea from Cincinnati as they went for the extended Masters 1000 event. But either way, we did an episode for the final there. But of course, that hasn't happened yet. So if you want an episode that focuses only on Alcaraz versus Sinner, then check out the episode before this one. Before the actual episode, once again, going to break down an entire tournament. Here, the final event before the U.S. Open. So if you do want some thoughts here for, once again, the actual outright for Winston-Salem, you're in the right place, and we're going to break down the tournament right now. Now, before we get into anything associated with the event, a reminder that you can help support the show by liking, subscribing on YouTube, because we do have, once again, the podcast available and a ton of locations. Use them on, or find it on YouTube, find it on Spotify, or find it on Apple. But once you can leave a rating and review on Spotify or Apple, and leave a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Plus, a reminder, we have some great merchandise on the merch store for the SGPN platform. We have shirts, we have sweatshirts, we have mugs, high quality, very affordable. Check that out. Plus, a reminder, we do have an app for SGPN free to download, and we do have all of our podcasts on there. So if you want some free picks, check out the app. Plus, a reminder, we are giving away a $1,000 circa NFL future bet with the phrase that pays. Submit your phrase now at sportsteam.com/phrase to once again have a chance to win a $1,000 free circa NFL future bet. Anyway, said before, we have nothing to recap for the actual Lock and Dog, but we do have some matches to recap from Sunday because once again, Winston-Salem did actually start already. So for the matches that took place on Sunday, overall decent balance of drama and I'd say ease. Mostly drama, I would say. So Offner lost to Capriva in 3 sets in the first match of the day. You saw Jari lose to Majchik. That was a competitive matchup, 7-6, 6-4. Martinez beat Goffin. Goffin we saw was injured in the first round loss to Baez on hard court a week or two ago. Didn't look good again as Martinez beat him comfortably. So Goffin, maybe he's going to retire soon, maybe not. But Martinez had beat him comfortably in one of the more lopsided matches of the day. Now, you had a pretty entertaining matchup there between Dzanshulp and Walton. Walton won the first set, then Dzanshulp came back and won in 3. Medjedovic beat Rinderknech in straight sets with an 11-9 tiebreak, so nice job by him winning in straight sets. We know the Rinderknech can be a bit underwhelming at times. Still a pretty good hardcore player with the serve, and Medjedovic did beat him in straight sets. Bu won a marathon against Sang as he won a final set breaker there in 3. You saw Karina Busta look really good against Nishioka as he won 6-0, 6-3. Most lopsided matchup on the entire card. And you had an epic to end the actual day as McDonald beat Holt in 3. He was extremely either compromised physically or exhausted. Either way, though, McDonald survived and he eventually did win in a final set breaker. But Holt had some chances, probably kicking himself for not converting as he ended up having a potential chance to take a 6-5 lead with a break, but unfortunately could not convert. McDonald held, then coasted in the tiebreak 7-2. So once again, even though the matchups might have looked more challenger field level with the actual, I'd say, talent or lack thereof on the card, a lot of fun competitive matchups. So hopefully we get the same energy moving forward in the remainder of the event. See a couple people in the comment section. I see Esco stopping by. I see Hydro, and I see Uneducated who is saying that he would pay to watch a session at Winston-Salem. It's pretty local. He's going on vacation, so he can't make it. But look, I'll put it this way. I heard that the Coors Field Stadium is very nice, even though the team sucks, and you have Otani hitting potential bombs in Coors Field. So not a bad alternative there, but I guess the timing didn't really work out. Maybe next year, Uneducated. But once again, pretty entertaining first couple of matches on the card, and we'll see what happens moving forward. But either way, once again, we are going to be breaking down the entire event with quarters, even though one full day was completed. So yes, the actual books did update their outright odds because of what happened in day one. So if you ended up taking a guy that I'm going to mention later on in the show at a much better price, that might be why because you took the guy before he played a match. I'm getting the advantage of seeing how the first round played out, I guess, but it is what it is. Anyway, nothing else to really add, though, for the, I'd say, once again, recap portion. To move on into the actual breakdown of Winston-Salem, starting off with the first piece of business, once again, the final event before the U.S. Open. So it could be pretty unpredictable, usually is, because you get a bunch of guys who opt out waiting for the U.S. Open, and you have some people chasing 250 titles. So keep that in mind. Might see a bit of an unpredictable tournament here, which can be explained perfectly with your recent winners, because Sonego beat Mickelson last year. We had that at 25-1. You also had Baez, who won a hard court event, which is kind of insane, against George. Manarino beat De Gere, and Ivashka, remember that guy? He ended up beating Emer in the final. So you've seen a lot of random names here, not surprising, but there is one common theme here. If you win the title, you tend to not repeat. Nobody's won back-to-back titles here since Isner about 14, 15 years ago. So it's been a while. Isner won in 11 and 12, but since then, there's been a new winner each time. Now, for the actual quarter odds, which we do have, starting off with the first quarter, this is going to be the Tsitsipas quarter, which means who knows what's going to happen. You have Arnaldi at 450. You have Tsitsipas at 187, by the way. Arnaldi's at 450. You have Dzanchop at 6-1. You have Busta at 650, who did win, of course, on Sunday. So did Dzanchop. You have Giron at 750, Navone at 10-1, Bu at 10-1, and Baez, who is a former champion, at 11-1. Now, Tsitsipas, we know, should be favored based on his overall upside. I'll put quotes around it, upside, but we're not taking him, obviously, because why would we trust him at all? He's got his dad back as his coach. Good luck with that. I think Bu could, in theory, beat him maybe in the second round. Who knows? The actual quarter is not terrible for Tsitsipas, but I just can't trust him. The price isn't worth it. I'd rather just avoid him like the plague and look at other long shot options. Because I think we'd all agree, for the Tsitsipas value, there's not much when he's favored to win the actual event, despite being terrible for the last couple of months. So I'll pass on Tsitsipas. I am going to go some other long shots instead. Now, for the actual quarter, though, the Tsitsipas matchup in the third round might be Giron, who has a bye, despite being really bad lately. He has Navone or an Indian qualifier. So Giron's actually had a decent path in the first two rounds or so. I'll go with him at 750. I like the price. I understand that he's bad in current form, but I do think him being American has some crowd support. He's still a pretty good hardcore player most of the time, and I do think that 750 is a pretty good price if you think he can maybe upset Tsitsipas. I don't mind it at 750. I'll take him there as my longer shot for the actual quarter. But you know what? I'm going to go to the other end of the quarter because you have Arnaldi, Dzanchop, Baez, and Busta. I'm going to let Arnaldi and Dzanchop kill each other. I would make a case for Arnaldi if it wasn't, in my opinion, a tricky matchup in the second round. Baez, though, beat Goffin on hard court in the last event, but he's been really bad on hard court for a long time. Busta, though, we know is a former... he made a deep run here last year. He ended up losing in the semis. He retired, actually, against, I believe it was Mickelson in the semis. When healthy, he's still pretty dangerous, and he looks very good against Nishioka, but I think he can be biased. I think he can maybe pull off an upset if he stays healthy. Durability is the main concern for Busta. I like the price, though, at $650. I'll take a flyer on it. Give me Busta at $650 and give me Giron at $750 as my only two thoughts or choices for the first quarter. If you want to go Arnaldi, I don't hate it. I'll pass instead. But I am not taking Tsitsipas. Not going to bother. Give me long shots for, in my opinion, what could be a very open quarter here for the first quarter. Moving on to the next one, looking at the second quarter. This one's going to be a pretty open one as well. You have two co-favorites, Medvedev at 275 and Diallo at 275 as well. You have Pericard at 4-1, who's been really bad lately, but still 4-1. Mueller is at 850. Fernley 9-1, who's been bad lately too. Martinez 10-1. Chorich, who's a former finalist, at 12-1. And you have Collignon at 28-1. Now, I'm going to be pretty straightforward here because I do think the two co-favorites are worthy of being co-favorites. Now, for the actual draw, Diallo has a bye, then Basaveretti or Collignon, probably Basaveretti, who has been good lately. But the argument is, do I think Basaveretti would beat him? No guarantee there. You're looking at Medvedev, though, who ended up beating Ritter in the first round, has Fernley in the second round, who's been really bad lately, said before. So it could be a fun matchup. The bottom half of the quarter, though, you have Moore You have Pericard maybe against Martinez, which looks like an easy win for Pericard. I'm not going to pick him until he figures the stuff out because he's been really bad lately. He lost to, I think, Wong in Cincinnati with no tie breaks either on a very fast hard court. It was an embarrassing showing by Pericard. It's been quite bad for months, so I'll pass on him there. But I do think I'm going to skip the bottom half. I understand you could argue you might pick one long shot, maybe a guy like Mueller who could maybe find a path and make a deep run. In reality, I think Diallo and Medjedovic with their serves should do well on the courts here. Medjedovic looked good last week too. Ended up losing 6-4, 6-4 to Alcaraz. Then ended up beating Griekspoor earlier in that event. I like the form he's in. We know he's a good hard court player. And Diallo, we know, can be good on hard court as well. Did win a grass title this year. But I think the two favorites who are, once again, young but talented, should look sharp in a pretty weak quarter, in my opinion. So I'll skip Pericard, I'll skip the other people. My super long shot would be Mueller at 850. I'll pass, though. Give me Medjedovic at 275, and give me Diallo 275 as well. I'll look at the comment section, see a couple of people chiming in, starting off with the people that are, once again, mentioning some guys in particular. Esco is mentioning my thoughts on Wong in a few hours. Wong looked pretty decent, I'd say, last week. We'll see how he does in this week. For the Wong match, though, you're saying it's in a couple hours. I'm trying to see. Oh, that's for Grand Slam qualifying. So I think he should win that. I mean, he's minus 150. I'm not really too familiar with Radesh, to be honest, but he did end up taking a long time off. He's not played since Wimbledon, so I would go Wong if anything. I do think the court switch could be tricky, not to mention, once again, he has not played since Wimbledon, so he's been off for about 2 months. So I think that Wong would be my choice there for that U.S. Open qualifying matchup. We'll see how that goes, but I do think that he should be a bigger favorite than he is for that matchup. I see Hydra mentioned he's going to skip Baez. I don't blame you. We all have some guys who we can't get right, and Baez is yours. It happens. It is what it is. And I see Sports Fan chiming in here about some overs and some overall bets. He likes the over in the first set for the Mislic match. I don't hate it. I can see a pretty, I'd say, even matchup early on. Mislic and Kovacevic have firepower that could result in a couple of holds. I don't mind your angle there also for the Navone over. I actually think that Sorish is alive to win that matchup because he looked pretty good in qualifying. Beat Tabilo. Nice job by him. Navone had the massive choke job in his matchup against Walton last week. And we'll see if he responds. But I think that the over makes sense. I think Sorish can actually win if you want to go for a bit of an underdog there. I don't mind it, but I think Navone, who we know really just isn't capable of winning on hard court, maybe finds a way to fumble this one, and you get a marathon in your hands. Don't mind those overs for those matches. Anyway, though, before we get into the remainder of the quarters for the breakdowns of the outrights, a reminder they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is MyBookie.ag, because you can bet on every sport with them. They have baseball, they have a WNBA, they have golf, tennis, and of course they have football futures. They also are available on occasions using to bet on, once again, every sport with crypto. They have deposits and payouts with crypto. And when you sign up, though, use the code SGPN to get 100% of the match up to 1K. Terms and conditions, apply the G promo code SGPN. We're also brought to by Rhythm because they have college football, which is back on Saturday. So we're less than a week away from college football. And a reminder that last week they were great with their models. For the non-conference spreads, 21.47% ROI. For in-conference money lines, a 22.47% ROI. So they've been really good in college football. And once again, you get on the action as college football does start this weekend. But they were great on FCS totals as well, week 0 and week 1. Rhythm's house model was 16-4 ATS. So they were plus 11.6 units. So go to the App Store now. Make sure you end up getting the Rhythm actual app. And when you do so, make your own model as the predictions, once again, can be really, really profitable, as we saw last year. When you do sign up for your actual, once again, account, you can get a free trial for a week by using the link, sportsgamebox.com Rhythm to get your 7-day free trial. Sportsgamebox.com Rhythm to get your 7-day free trial. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. We're in the first 2 quarters. Time to keep it rolling with the third quarter. Moving on to what should be a pretty open one, in my opinion, as well. This is the quarter. Now, he has not exactly played for a while, so he might be a bit rusty. We'll see how he looks. Now, he's a plus 375 favorite. Once again, plus 375. Armageddon is on the actual calendar for this quarter in particular, and we'll see what happens. Now, you're looking at him being the favorite of 375. Mychik is 5-1 off the win against Jari. Borges is at 5-1. McDonald at 550. Kovacevic is at 650. You have Kikmanovic at 750. Darderi at 8-1, who I will not be taking under any circumstances. Caprivo at 9-1, and Misolic at 14-1. So Korda, I understand when he's actually healthy, is the best hardcourt player in this section. However, do I care? Not really. The fact is, Korda is going to be getting ready for the U.S. Open, and he's not played in a while, couple months. I can't see a world where Korda ends up playing a couple matches. Maybe he re-aggravates something, or maybe he at some point kind of takes his foot off the gas and gets ready for the U.S. Open. Either way, though, I think that Korda is going to be a guy who I'll pass on. Too much uncertainty, not interested. I'll pass on him there. Now, for the other options here, Mychik is interesting. I think he can do some damage, but I really just wasn't interested based on the price. 5-1's not terrible, but I do think at the end of the day, when he has to go up against Borges and then potentially Korda in the next two rounds, not interested. I'd rather go for the bottom half of that quarter instead. I'll target guys who I think can do some damage on hard court. We ended up seeing, for example, this guy make the final of an event a couple weeks ago, Kovacevic. I think he has some value there. I think he'll end up beating Misolic in the first round. Then he has a matchup against Kikmanovic in the second round, which could be interesting. McDonald, though, we saw kind of run a gas against Holt. Got the job done, but I still think he might be compromised. We'll see. Darderi ended up retiring against Comasagna in Cincinnati, so I question the actual health, so not interested in him at all. But I think that Kovacevic and or Kikmanovic have some value at their prices, and I like the pricing range here. I see 650 for Kovacevic. I see 750 for Kikmanovic. I'll go with those two. We saw Kikmanovic win a title this year on hard court in Delray, and we know that he can be very streaky. It's a good event to be streaky in. We saw Sunigo last year, for example, who was really bad and then caught fire and won the event. So you're looking at weird things happening potentially in the final week before Grand Slam. Give me two guys with upside who I think can play well on hard court. I think that it's a good spot for the price. Give me Kovacevic at 650 and Kikmanovic at 750 as my two thoughts for the third quarter. Common theme, we are going pretty bold on these quarters, a lot of good plus money, and people tend to be scared off by the final event before Grand Slam. I think there's value to be had when you're looking at so many big plus money prices. If you pick the right long shot, you are in very good shape. So we did it last year with Sunigo. We'll try to do it again here. But I see some value at the quarters. So once again, those are my two picks for the third quarter. Moving on to the fourth quarter. Speaking of Sunigo, this is his quarter. Now, Greek Sport is favored at 275. You have Sunigo at 333. You have Agut at around 850. Munar at 9-1. You have Fuchsovics at 9-1. Comasagna at 9-1. Safulin 10-1. You have Bellucci at 11-1. O'Connell 16-1. Gaston 20-1. And that's basically it. So, for the quarter, do I think that Greek Sport should be favored? I'd say yes. Now, I do want to point out this was on grass, but Greek Sport did win a title in Mallorca, coincidentally, the week right before Wimbledon. So Greek Sport does seem to take these events seriously compared to other guys who might be half-assing it, getting ready for the Grand Slam. Greek Sport proved in the grass slate that even with the Grand Slam on deck, he might potentially punt a first-round match in the Grand Slam, like he did against Brooksby in that Wimbledon matchup, in order to win a title. So I do think Greek Sport should be motivated here. I do think that he's going to be one of the more motivated guys compared to others on this actual, once again, bracket, because he's proven this year that he does take this event seriously right before Grand Slam, which I like to see. Now, for the actual quarter itself, I'm going pretty chalky. I think Agut makes sense. But I think that Safulin could be tricky for him in the second round. Greek Sport, though, has a bye, then Fuchsovics or Gaston. Two guys who can be quite injured, and Gaston has not been in great form lately. Fuchsovics should win that. Maybe he's a guy who could make a dark horse run, but I don't trust his durability. I think Greek Sport is a good hardcourt player. We saw it earlier this year. I like the path. I like the price. I'll go with him at 275 as my first choice for the quarter. But I will go with somebody else as well. Give me Sunigo at 333, mainly based on how he's played lately. I know that he has not really been winning many matches, but he did take Fritz to what was looking like a potential 3 sets as he ended up losing a 7-6, 7-5. Sunigo, though, made a deep run in doubles at Cincy as he ended up losing the final on Sunday. But he beat Bergs. We saw him win a set against Rublev, lost in 3. Decent competition, and he's been looking pretty good. I think he has some value at 333. Don't mind the draw either for him. He does have a bye, then Vukic probably, then Munar or Bellucci or Comasagna. Really not a bad draw at all for Sonego. So I do think he should look sharp here again. I like the price of 333. That'll be my last pick there for the quarters. Now, checking the comment section once again, seeing if anybody else has anything else to say. I see a couple people once again mentioning some matches, either in US Open qualifying or just overall the matches in Winston-Salem. Once again, a brief side note. I don't want to get into a full rant because we actually have some hours to get into and some lock and dog picks. But this schedule with the 1,000 events in Toronto and Cincy ending midweek is absolutely moronic. They got to stop doing this. I think it's insane that you have a couple of people, and I'm going to mention a guy who is an honorable, I'd say, mention for the Clown Hall of Fame. He's probably there already. Vukic is a guy that we can potentially criticize from time to time, but there's an even bigger head case from Australia who you forgot about, Tomic. So Tomic actually made the final of a challenger event, and he quit. He no-showed the final of the event. Why? Because he has US Open qualifying to worry about. So you have a couple of really weird scenarios going on where you had a guy entering the final of a challenger event who quit. He withdrew before the final so he could play US Open qualifying. On top of that, once again, you have a couple of players who were playing midweek. Once again, I know it's not going to be a big deal for Sinner and Alcaraz, but still, we ended up seeing Shelton and we saw Kashanov play midweek last week. Then Shelton had to turn around and play in Cincy, and he ran out of gas in the event. This midweek final thing is absolutely ridiculous, and I feel like they got to fix it. I understand you want to add extra days off. I think Alcaraz and Sinner having a day off on Sunday to play on Monday makes no sense for a reference, but still, want to mention it. Whatever this random calendar situation is going on, they got to fix it because this is awful. Want to mention it. But anyway, Tomic was the guy I wanted to mention for the story. Very on brand for him, but he ended up quitting before the final of a challenger title match. So once again, he quit, not even showing up. He withdrew. So you ended up seeing Ferry win the title by default because Tomic left to play qualifying in the US Open. There's way too many events that are jam-packed right now. They have to fix it. Wanted to mention it, though. I thought that was something that needed to be talked about. Anyway, moving on to the actual outrights to win the event. For the odds, looking at Tsitsipas being favored 7-1, you have Medjedovic at 8-1, Diallo at 850, Griekspoor at 9-1, Sonego 12-1, you have Korda at 18-1. Massive wild card, but if he's healthy, then maybe, but I'm not going to pick him, full disclosure. Pericard, who's been really bad lately, at 18-1 as well. Arnaldi, 20-1. You have Mychik at 20-1. You have Dzanchop at 22-1. You have Borges 25-1. Kovacevic 25-1. McDonald at 25-1. Boo 25-1. You have, or Boo's 30-1, I mean. You have Agut at 30-1. Busta 30-1. You kind of get the point. Now, I do want to point out there are a lot of guys on this list who have never won an ATP title before. So you might see somebody get their maiden title. We'll see by naming them out just quickly for reference. Medjedovic, you have, looking at the names here, Arnaldi has never won one. Mychik's never won one. Dzanchop's never won one. You have Kovacevic who's never won one. McDonald, I think's won one either. Boo hasn't. So I'm mentioning a bunch of guys who I just said who have really never collected many trophies on the ATP level. We'll see if that can change here this upcoming week. But looking at the actual favorites here, Tsitsipas, of course, we are not taking 7-1, not even close. Like, I think that he is definitely a guy who, based on his history, should be favored in the event. In reality, there's no value taking a guy that's that mentally checked out and a guy who's been that bad lately. I can't take him. I think it's very weird for the, once again, option of Tsitsipas 7-1. Looks pretty large for a guy who has had a decent resume in his career. I don't give a damn about resume. He stinks right now. Pass. Not taking him there. Now, I will point out, I'm not going to go super long shot in this field because I do think there are a couple of guys who are young and once again who might be without a title in their careers who are priced pretty cheaply, but I like their form. So for reference here, I'm going to start off with a guy who actually won a title earlier this year. Give me Diallo at 850. Now, I said before, he's in the same exact quarter as Medvedev, which could be a bit interesting, but I think that he's a good player. I like the fact that he's going to be in the Tsitsipas half, who could fall apart. We'll see. But if he gets past Medvedev, you're looking at what could be Mueller or maybe Perricard in the next round. I think it's doable, and I think that he's a good player in general. Give me Diallo at 850. Yes, the second serve could be better. He had a set point or two against Sinner, and Sinner is in the final, obviously, not dropping a set in Cincy. You could argue that Diallo got closer than anybody else at winning a set against Sinner, which bodes well for his chances, maybe, of beating weird competition here in this event. But give me Diallo at 850. But I will go with the guy he might face off against later on, or I should say in the first couple of rounds. I have to go with the form. Give me Medvedev at 850, a guy who's never won a title before. Did lose in a couple of finals, lost last year to, I believe it was Shapovalov in the final event last year. But still, point is he's a very good hardcourt player. He ended up losing to Alcaraz 6-4, 6-4 in Cincy, who was in the final, obviously. But in that event, he was looking pretty sharp, and he ended up beating Rinderknech in the first round here. Very good serve, which can play well, and you're looking at a guy who I think is just a very talented hardcourt player. He's underrated. He won the next-gen final on hardcourt about a year or two ago, but the fact is he beat Kovacevic and he beat Griekspoor in straight sets. I think those are two good hardcourt players, and the fact is losing Alcaraz while winning 3 of her last 4 is still a solid showing. I think he's in good form. He's a good hardcourt player. Give me 850 as my choice there for the second option. Now, I see it being mentioned in the chat that sports fan has not been interested in Griekspoor. He hasn't been bad lately. I agree. Having said that, 9-1 for a guy who's objectively a solid hardcourt player. Yes, he might go to a couple tiebreaks, which could be a bit dicey, but I think 9-1 is a good price. I like the draw for a guy that has multiple ATP titles, and you're looking at his actual path. By Fucsovics or Gaston, maybe a Gut in the third round. You're looking at what could be Sonego or Munar in the, once again, potential quarterfinal matchup. I don't mind it. I think 9-1 has some value. I think that he's a guy who, as said before, has proven right before a Grand Slam, he will not mentally check out. He's there to win, and I like that. Give me Griekspoor 9-1, but I will go with the breaking of the rule that I mentioned earlier, a guy actually repeating at the event. It does not happen in about 14 years. Maybe now, because I'll go with Sonego at 14-1. I think he's played pretty well lately. Now, the results have not been amazing in terms of wins and losses, but he ended up pushing Fritz to the brink. He beat Bergs. He ended up winning a set against Rublev in Toronto. I think he's a guy who I know can be quite volatile. I get it. But we know that his overall game translates well to the courts here. His firepower. He came to the net a lot last year, and it's why he barely got broken. If he can channel that again and be aggressive coming forward and kind of copy and paste the same game plan he had last year, 14-1, I think it's a good price. It's not 25-1 like last year that we ended up winning on, but I still like him for this one. Give me Sonego. I'm trying to think if he was actually bigger than 25-1. Was he 40-1? I think he was 25-1. I'll have to double check that, but still. I will go with him as well as my last choice for the event. But once again, I think that there's a lot of talent at the top, maybe some young talent, but I do think that the long shots are going to be a potential semifinalist, like Ottman, for example, in Cincy, where you see one guy make a run, but you're not going to pick him to win the thing. And I think that's going to be what happens here. So maybe a long shot makes it to the final and loses, but I like the options I have here for the outright. So once again, for the actual winners that I'm picking, I'm going to go with Diallo at 850. I'm going to go with Medvedev at 850 as well, picking him to win his first ATP title. Go with Griekspoor at 9-1. And defending champion, Sonego at 14-1. Going to wrap it up, though, for the outright. Time for the Lock and Dog picks. Before we get into the Lock and Dog reminder, brought to you by our sponsor, which is Circa, because it's the final week you can actually sign up for the contest. You have Circa Contest Weekend, which is from the 21st to 23rd, and you can enter the 3 biggest football contests for the upcoming NFL season. There's Circa Million, Circa Survivor, Circa Rendissimo, over $20 million guaranteed prizes, and you can once again use the promo code SGP15 to get 15% off your stay at Circa. But the amazing weekend at Circa Contest Weekend from the 21st to 23rd, you get live shows and open bars. Contest open to everyone. Because I've been Nevada, please render with our proxy. Use footballcontest.com. Use code SGP to get $50 off your proxy fees. We're also brought to you by Network Fantasy, because they're Mania happening all summer long. If you're interested in fantasy football, this is a good way to make a lot of money, because first place makes $2 million. $15 million in prizes total, and they have no arguments about trades, and best ball is the way to play fantasy football. You can also use Underdog for your pick'em entries, for tennis, esports, basketball, you name it, but you could also win it 500 times your entry. What it's not, though, for your new account, there's a brand new offer from Underdog. Play just $5, get $50 in bonus funds, which is on at Underdog Fantasy, with the promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finish going through the outrights for the event. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I'm going to go to a parlay, actually. Two decent favorites on the money line. I'll take them together. Give me Basavaredi money line with Vukic money line at minus 121. That's on BetMGM. Now, Basavaredi, we know, is a hard court specialist for a young guy. He's a good hard court player. He's won 4 of his last 5 hard court matches, and the one exception was a loss to Zverev. No shame in that. He's beating who he's supposed to. He's looked good so far. I think he'll look sharp once again here in his first matchup here. You're looking at Kalignon, though, who has not played on hard court in a while, been busy on the clay slate. He's not played a hard court match since February. He's a decent, I'd say, clay player, and he's a decent hard court player in the challenger circuit. But I do think that Basavaredi is more proven on the ATP level on hard court. I think he should win this one. That's why he's a big favorite in this one. Not facing off against anybody on hard court, though, whether it's ATP or Challenger, or even ITF for months, is problematic for him. I think Basavaredi wins this matchup easily. For the other one, though, Vukic, we know, can be a head case, but he has been playing better lately. He ended up winning both matches in qualifying in straight sets. He looked pretty decent. Lost to Basavaredi, coincidentally, in a marathon in Cincy. But I do think Vukic is still a pretty good hardcore player. We saw in the Australian Open this year. He made a good run. I think that he's a guy who's very streaky. He was in really bad form about a month or two ago. He's starting to get better. I believe he's 5-3 in his last 8, which is not amazing, but he's against a complete unknown as you're looking at Dostanic, who has never played an ATP match his entire career. So he's been a challenger guy pretty much only, and now he's supposed to walk in and do some damage. I'm skeptical. Now, I do think you might see a breaker or two. Vukic can be quite underwhelming returning-wise, but the price feels pretty cheap on Vukic, actually. For a guy that went through qualifying, who did not drop a set, Dostanic didn't even qualify. He was a wild card. So the fact is, Vukic might be more accustomed to the courts here, and the fact is you have a guy, complete unknown, who's priced to be competitive. I'm fine with that. I think Vukic, though, is better, and I think that 250 is a pretty cheap number that I think will grow over time. So give me the 2-pick parlay, Basavaredi and Vukic money line at minus 121 as my lock for the show. For my dog, I'm going to go with a young American. Going to go fading a guy who's been in free fall for the last year or two. I'm going to fade Coric. Now, I think Coric can, in theory, win because Blanche is a complete unknown as well. But, unlike Dostanic, he actually qualified, and he looked good doing it. So I'm going to go with Blanche team total over 12.5 games at plus 108. He can win in straight sets with a breaker. He can lose in 3 or win in 3. Couple ways to get there. The money line's plus 150, but he's been really good on hard court this year. 29-9 straight up on hard court. Now, all of course being in either qualifying or challengers, etc. But he's been good lately. Ended up beating Boyer and Royer in qualifying. Coric, though, has won 0 ATP matches this season. He's been very underwhelming. We know he's still a good hard court player when he's on, but he's been bad lately. Ended up losing to Gigante in 3 sets on hard court, which is embarrassing. Point is, though, Coric can win against Blanche if the moment's too big for him. Blanche, though, a pretty good server, and I do think that Coric can serve well, too, and that might result in a breaker or two. But there's been a very common theme in Coric's matches, a bunch of long sets. There's been a 7-5 or a 7-6 set in 10 of his last 11 matches. So you're looking at what should be at least one marathon set. Maybe Blanche wins it, and he ends up winning in 3, 2, or even loses in 3. Coric, though, I can't trust. I think Blanche is actually alive to win the matchup, but he's never won an ATP match before. He lost to Nadal on clay and Makic last year on hard court, but he has experience. He went through qualifying. He ended up beating Boyer, who was playing decent hardcore tennis, and Royer, who is fine. I think it's a pretty decent spot for Blanche to potentially pull off the upset here, but I'll play it safe, give him the team total over. I'll fade Coric in his current form for this one. So once again, the lock and dog for the show. The lock's going to be on a parlay. Give me Basavaredi money line with Vukic money line at minus 121 on BetMGM. For the dog, I'm going to go with Blanche team total over 12.5 against Coric at plus 108 on FanDuel. It's going to wrap it up for the show. We'll be back once again later on in the week to break down the remainder of Winston-Salem. Until next time, follow me on Twitter, Radio. Good luck.